Hi everyone in Algebra 2B. These are going to be your questions on lesson 99A. Remember that in the comments of this video, you're going to place all of your questions for lesson 99B. So to start off for number 99A, the first problem we were going to look at is number 3. So for number 3, it says that the current in the river was 8 miles per hour. The boat could go 60 miles upstream in half the time that it took to go 280 miles downstream. How fast could the boat go in still water? Okay, so it says that the current, so W is going to be equal to 8. Then it says the distance upstream is going to be 60. Then it says the time up was half the time downstream. And it could go 280 miles downstream. So distance downstream be 280. I'm going to change this equation so that it doesn't have a fraction. So I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 2, which means that I would end up getting over here, TD is equal to 2TU. So this is the one that we're actually going to use. Over here, we're not going to use this one. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I have my downstream equation, which is going to be B plus W times TD equals DD. And then I have my upstream equation, which is going to be B minus W times TU equals DU. I'm going to plug in the information that I have. So I have the W is going to be equal to 8. I have TD is equal to 2 times TU. And DD is equal to 280. Now I'm going to distribute that, and I'm going to get 2TUB plus 16TU equals 280. Now for the second equation, I'm going to plug in the W. So that's going to be B minus 8 times TU equals 60. Now you're going to distribute the TU, so I have TUB minus 8TU equals 60. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do elimination. So I'm going to multiply this equation by -2 so I can eliminate the TUB. So when I do that, I'm going to get -2 TUB plus 16 TU equals -120. So my TUBs are going to cancel, and I'm going to get 32 TU is equal to 280 minus 120, which is 160. And when you divide that by 32, you're going to get TU is equal to 5. But what we're trying to solve for is we're trying to solve for what is the speed of the boat. So we're trying to solve for B. So I'm going to take this TU and plug it into this equation here. I get 5 times B minus 8 times 5 equals 60. -8 times 5 would be -40. So when I move it to the other side, I would add 40, giving me 5B is equal to 100. When you divide by 5, you get the speed of the boat in still water is going to be equal to 20. And that concludes all your number 3. Moving on to number 4, we're going to bring in some of our notes from lesson 96. So if you don't have these written down, this is something that I would probably record somewhere so that you are able to easily refer back to it when you're doing a problem like this. So it says the work accomplished varied jointly as the number of people and their average productivity factor. If 100 people with an average productivity factor of 20 could produce 8,000 units on one shift, how many people whose factor was only 2 would be required to produce 16,000 units on one shift? It does say to work the problem 2 ways. We're not going to work the problem 2 ways. We're only going to do it once. This is number 4. So it says that the work accomplished varied jointly. So that means on the left-hand side, I'm going to have W1 over W2. it says varies jointly, so I'm actually going to use this equation here, varies jointly. It's varying jointly based off of the number of people and their average productivity factor. So I'm going to say P1 and then productivity factor, I'm going to do PF1. And that's going to be over people 2 and productivity factor 2. So we use this equation, varies jointly. It's exactly what it said in the problem. Now I'm going to go through and solve. So it says that 100 people had an average productivity factor of 20 to produce 8,000 units. So the work that's being produced is the unit. So it would be 8,000. The number of people was 100. And the productivity factor was 20. Now for the second time through, it says how many people, so we're going to solve for P2, would be required to finish 16,000 units with a factor of only 2. So the productivity factor was only 2, and they're trying to produce 16,000 units, which is double what we had before. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross multiply. So I have 2 times 8,000, so 2 times 8,000 x is equal to 16,000 times 100 times 20. So I'm going to divide both sides. When you multiply 8,000 times 2, you're going to get 16,000. So 16,000. If you divide both sides by 16,000, you'll see that the 16,000s are going to cancel. So x is going to be equal to 2,000. And that would be 2,000 people would be your result. Okay, moving on, we're going to look at number 8. So these are 2 triangles that you have to solve for M and N. First thing that I'm going to do is for the first one, I need to use a reference triangle. So I would use a 30, 60, 90 reference triangle, where there's the 30 degrees here, 60 is here. 30 degrees is root 3, hypotenuse is 2, opposite is 1. So when I set up my ratios, I'm going to go N over 1 equals 124 over 2 equals M over root 3. Now when I cross multiply these, I'm going to do N first, so that would be 2N equals 124. When I divide both sides by 2, I get N is equal to 62. Now when I cross multiply the second 2, it would be 2M equals 124 root 3. Divide by 2. So for M, I'm going to get 62 square root 3. Now for my second one, I have to draw my other reference triangle, and you need to face it in the same direction. So for this one, I'm going to have the right angle here, and it's going to be 45, 45, 90. So the sides are 1, 1, square root of 2. Notice that on this triangle, both P and Q are going to be equal to each other because on the reference triangle, the sides are exactly the same. So I'm just going to solve for one of them. So I'm going to go P over 1 equals 5 root 2 over root 2. Now if I cross multiply that, I'm going to get root 2 P equals 5 root 2. Divide both sides by root 2. And P is going to be equal to 5. And because I know that both of them are going to be equal to each other, I know that P and Q are going to be equal to 5. So again, the reason is because these two sides are the same on the reference triangle, so therefore these two sides are going to be the same on that triangle because we're doing similar triangles. Now moving on, we're going to look at number 9. For number 9, we're going to be solving for the number that's a fractional distance away from 2 points. And for this one, you do have a formula that you're going to be using. And that formula is going to be n is equal to the first number plus the fraction times the second number minus the first. So this is the order it shows up is always fraction, first, second. So the first number is going to be 1/2. The fraction is 2/7. And then it's going to be the second, so 2 1/3 minus 1/2. Now I'm starting with the parentheses, and I want to make that into an improper fraction first. I'm leaving everything else the same. But that becomes 7/3 minus 1/2. And in order to combine those, I would need to make a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply that by 2 and 3. So I'm going to have 1/2 plus 2/7. That would be 14 minus 3, which would be 11/6. 2 goes into 6 3 times. So I'm going to have 1/2 plus 11/21. So the common denominator here is going to be 42. So I multiply the first fraction by 21, second fraction by 2. And that would give me 21/42 plus 22/42. And that will give you a result of 43/42, or 1 and 1/42. Either of those would be sufficient for your answer. Moving on, we're going to look at number 11. So the first thing that I'm going to do for number 11 is I'm actually going to solve the top equation for x. By doing that, I'm going to get x is equal to 3y plus 2. When I plug that in, I'm going to get 3y plus 2 multiplied by y equals 8. I'm going to distribute the y, and at the same time, I'm going to bring the 8 to the left-hand side. And that would give me 3y squared plus 2y minus 8 equals 0. Now, in order to solve, I'm going to do quadratic formula. So this will be my a, this will be my b, and this will be my c. So it's going to be y is equal to -2 plus or minus the square root, 2 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So I have -2/6 plus or minus the square root of 4, and that would end up being 4 times 3 times 8, which is 96. So it would be 4 plus 96 all over 6. We need to know that 96 plus 4 is actually 100, and the square root of 100 is 10. So this would be -2/6 plus or minus 10/6. And we do need to evaluate that. So that means I'm going to get two values. I'm going to get y is equal to -2 plus 10, which would be 8/6. So simplifies to 4/3. And then I'm going to get -2 minus 10, which would be -12/6. Simplifies to -2. Now what I need to do is I need to solve for when y is equal to 4/3, and then when y is equal to -2. I'm going to take that 4/3 and plug it into this equation. That would be 3 times 4/3 plus 2. Notice that the 3's do cancel, so really I'm left with x is equal to 4 plus 2, which is 6. So x would be equal to 6. So if my x is 6, then my y is 4/3. And that's going to be your first answer. Your second answer will be the result when y is equal to -2. So if I plug in -2 in that equation, it would be 3 times -2 plus 2. So -6 plus 2, that means x is equal to negative 4. So remember, your x always comes first, so it would be negative 4, comma, negative 2, which is your y. And those are your two results for number 11. Now moving on, we're going to look at number 12. So what we need to do for number 13, we need to eliminate one of the variables. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to eliminate z when I add these together. So I'm going to multiply the top equation by negative 1. I'm going to get negative 3x minus 2y plus 2z equals negative 1. I'm going to add that to the middle equation, which is x plus y minus z equals negative 1. By doing that, my z's are going to cancel, and I would be left with negative 2x minus y is equal to negative 2. I'm going to do the same thing when I add the bottom two equations, but I'm going to eliminate z. So I need to multiply this middle equation by 2 if I want to eliminate the z. When I do that, I'm going to get 2x plus 2y minus 2z equals negative 2, and I'm adding that to 5x plus 2y plus 2z equals 8. When I do that, my z's are going to cancel, and I'm going to get 7x plus 4y equals 6. Now, I can either do substitution or elimination with these two equations right here. I'm going to solve this equation for y, though. So I have negative y equals 2x minus 2. And if I divide the whole thing by negative 1, I'm going to get y is equal to negative 2x plus 2. And I'm doing substitution. So now that I have that, I'm going to plug it into this equation here. And that would be 7x plus 4 times negative 2x plus 2 equals 6. So if I divide or distribute the 4, I get 7x minus 8x plus 8 equals 6. So that's my substitution. Move the 8 to the other side, which would give us minus 8. 7x minus 8x would be negative x is equal to negative 2. Therefore, x is going to be equal to positive 2. Once you know that, we're going to plug it into this equation here. So y would be equal to negative 2 times 2 plus 2. Negative 2 times 2 is going to be negative 4 plus 2. So y is going to be equal to negative 2. Lastly, we do need to solve for z. So I'm going to take both these values and plug it into my middle equation there, which would be 2 plus negative 2 minus z equals negative 1. Well, look at that. On the left-hand side, 2 minus 2 is actually 0, so they cancel. So I have negative z equals negative 1. And when you divide by negative 1, z is going to be equal to positive 1. And that is your result for number 13. Now moving on to number 14. Number 14 is actually tricky because it says if h of x is equal to x squared minus 4, your domain is negative integers. And remember that domain is actually your possible values for x. So that means the only values you can plug into this equation are going to be negative numbers. Well, if you look at the question, it says find h of 4. Is 4 a negative number? It's not, which means that you can't actually plug this value in because it's not a negative number. So your answer is actually nothing. So for number 14, there is no result. There's nothing in that set because we can't plug in 4 when it's not even a negative integer. Moving on to number 15. So I'm going to solve this equation for y. So I have negative y is less than negative x minus 2. When I divide the whole equation by negative 1, remember that that flips the sign, which means that y is going to be greater than positive x plus 2. Because there's no equal sign, this is going to be a dotted line. And when y is greater than, that's going to shade everything above that line. For this next one, I'm solving for y, so I have 5y is less than or equal to negative 3x minus 5. I'm going to divide the whole thing by 5, which gives me y is less than or equal to negative 3/5 x minus 1. Now this one does have an equal sign, so it's going to be a solid line, but this time it says y is less than, so that's going to be everything underneath it. Now I need to graph this. So this first one is going to be crossing at positive 2. The slope is 1 over 1, so that means up 1 over 1. Or down 1 to the left 1. It doesn't matter which one you do. But this is going to be a dotted line, so make sure you put a dotted line through those points. Now for the second one, it's crossing at negative 1. And the slope is down 3 over positive 5. So down 1, 2, 3 over 5. Or you could always go 1, 2, 3 up into the left 5. That's going to give you the same line. And this one's going to be a solid line. And now we're going to shade our region that satisfies the equation. So the first line, the dotted line, it says to shade everything above. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to shade everything above this line. Then for my second line, it's everything below it. So I'm going to shade everything below that line. And your answer is going to be the result that's shaded by both regions, which would be under the solid line and over the dotted line. And that would be your result. And that concludes your questions on lesson 99A. I hope you guys all have a great day.